At the point when he opens his eyes, treasure tracker Nate is balancing outside down from a line of freight boxes that are additionally hanging from an open plane. He advances up as he wards off different soldiers of fortune and figures out how to move into the plane once more. In any case, when he gets inside, a red vehicle pushes him back out as he tumbles to his demise. A hand snatches his without a moment to spare, which matches a little experience Nate had at the point when he was a kid 15 years sooner. Youthful Nate and his more established sibling Sam slipped into a historical center in Boston, and Nate would have tumbled off the window if Sam hadn't gotten him. The vagrant siblings are searching for a guide made after the Magellan undertaking to use to track down an old fortune. Tragically, when Sam attempts to pick the lock, he sets off the alert and they're gotten by the police. The young men are returned to the halfway house and Nate will remain, but since this is Sam's third strike, he should be brought to jail. They give the siblings a second alone to bid farewell, so Sam exploits this to escape. Prior to leaving, however, he gives Nate his cherished ring to constantly be with him and vows to come for him in what's to come after Sam's gone. Nate seizes a void piece of paper in his sibling's lighter, which he uses to uncover a secret message with uplifting statements from Sam. Back in the current day, Nate now works as a barkeep in New York. He moreover pickpockets rich clients by getting close with irregular reasons, like aiding a young lady light her cigarette to take her wristband. Nate still conveys his sibling's lighter with him despite the fact that it isn't working very well nowadays. One night while he's in the bar, a man called Contaminate approaches Nate and compliments him on his pickpocketing abilities. Prior to offering him to go along with him on an approaching significant occupation Nate isn't going to begin doing wrongdoing with the outsider and throws him out just to then, at that point, find Tarnish took the armband from his pocket and left his card. All things considered, needing the armband back, Nate goes to the location on the card, sneaking inside the condo by taking the keys from the custodian. Tarnish is now sitting tight for himself, and to Nate's shock, he's in control of the unique Magellan's Guide. Nate remarks on the legends that say the first excursion had been intended to view as gold, and Soil affirms it's valid. The excursion had been subsidized by the Moncada family, and the ongoing beneficiaries Armando and his child Santiago are as yet searching for that fortune to assist him with persuading Nate to go along with him. Contaminate specifies he was a companion of Sam's and even shows him an image of his grown-up self. Clearly Sam vanished after they tracked down Magellan's diary, and Contaminate hasn't even heard from him since. Nate concurs that sounds like Sam on the grounds that he hasn't been in touch with him either, so Contaminate calls attention to that. Looking for the gold could help Nate track down Sam as well. Nate still turns him down, guaranteeing the sibling he knew doesn't exist any longer. Anyway, when he gets back to his condo, he opens a case he keeps with significant recollections, which incorporates postcards from Sam. Nate deceived Tarnish when he said his sibling at absolutely no point ever reached him in the future. He likewise tracks down the ring, and in the wake of putting it back on, he chooses the believes should do this, all things considered. Soil and Nate meet to design their first move. There's a closeout coming up, and one of the collectibles they're advertising across functions as a key for the chamber where they've stowed away the gold. The legend says there are 2 keys, and Contaminate as of now has the other one, so they need to take this one to get everything rolling. In the wake of requesting Tarnish to go 50-50 on the gold, Nate utilizes his leisure time to study the structure where the bartering will be held and thinks of an arrangement. The evening of the closeout, Contaminate and Nate see a significant red vehicle and figure out Santiago is additionally there, so there'll be intense rivalry for the cross since he thinks the gold is his inheritance. He isn't the only one, however. He's utilized soldier of fortune pioneer Joe, who used to be Tarnish's accomplice, and prods him when she sees him as the sale is going to begin. Contaminate claims to be one of the purchasers. While Nate prepares the arrangement, Joe sees him moving dubiously and sends her men to watch out for him by putting his gum on the advanced lock. Nate figures out how to get inside the electrical room. The thought is to cut power so that Contaminate can take the cross in obscurity. Since Nate's taking too lengthy, Contaminate winds up with no other decision except for to begin offering against Santiago, even in the event that he doesn't really have the cash for it. Tragically, Nate is tracked down by Joe's man. Furthermore, a battle starts in the wake of trading scarcely any blows. Nate runs out of the room and chooses to cause an interruption by hopping on the lobby roof. Lights. Now everybody is terrifying and the cross is being removed, so Tarnish turns his coat around and claims to be one of the laborers as Nate is found and pursued by security. Soil puts his hands on the cross and removes it, expressing he's in Charge of taking it to the vault. However, Joe sees this and pursues him. She figures out how to corner him and undermine him with her blade. However, at that point security tracks down them and attempts to capture her for going after a sale representative. Tarnish will disappear with the cross while Joe battles the watchman. When Soil successfully returns to his vehicle, Nate is pausing for himself and they consent to go to Spain together. On the plane, Nate will look at the chief's diary that affirms the legend Magellan tracked down lots of gold in the Philippines, hid it in Barcelona, and afterward told the Moncada family that he tracked down nothing. Following the hints in the diary, they'll have the option to see as the gold alb. 8. Up to this point the primary piece of information is only a tree. Once they show up in Barcelona, they meet with Chloe, another fortune tracker that has figured out how to obtain the other cross. Anyway, she would rather not work with Tarnish, who she views as a liar and a deceiver. After she leaves, Nate finds she took their cross with her and pursues her through the roads of Barcelona. Chloe is quicker, however, and she prepares it to her vehicle to get away. Nate and Tarnish don't surrender and persuade her to remain by calling attention to she may have the crosses. However, they have the diary, so they're the ones in particular that know where to go straight away. Presently they're all cooperating. Nate assumes them to the position showed by the piece of information. It's anything but a genuine tree. It alludes to a congregation that is pine as a component of the name and a tree as its logo. In the meantime, Santiago defies his father. Armando has showed up on the news saying he'll offer his fortune, and he admits the justification behind this is that their cash is dunked in blood, unfit to make him alter his perspective. Santiago leaves. What's more, goes to see Joe to arrange all her and eye on Soil since he's been seen in and out of town. Back to the group, they're having some time off prior to bouncing on the following piece of the plan. While Nate is in the kitchen, Chloe tells Tarnish she's visitor. Nate is Sam's sibling and requests that Tarnish tell him the reality of what occurred. However, Soil simply says he'll do it when the time is yet again right. The following day, Santiago attempts to alter his dad's perspective on offering the fortune. Since Armando denies, Santiago follows him to his vehicle. Furthermore, orders Joe to kill him. When night falls, the group enters the congregation claiming to be sightseers, and Nate is stunned to find the postcards they sell there match one of Sam's. Following the images and words cut on the floor, furthermore, walls, the threesome tracks down a mystery button that Nate presses to open a covered-up painting behind a Mary sculpture. When Nate turns it around and uncovers an image of damnation, the special stepped area reveals the keyholes for the crosses. Nate and Chloe utilize the keys and turn it clockwise first, which delivers a series of darts that nearly kills them. Fortunately, they avoid in the nick of time and attempt clockwise next, which at long last gives them admittance to a secret passage. The diary says one should keep awake in paradise. What's more, the other down in damnation. So Nate and Chloe enter the passage with one of the crosses while Contaminate stays outside with the other for Tarnish to be aware where he really wants to go next. Nate puts a tracker on his telephone. Presently, Soil can follow their developments uninformed that Joe is following him as well. Nate and Chloe follow a baffling burrow that in the long run takes them to a club, and Joe's men are there as well. By claiming to be a couple moving, the team crosses the room and makes it to the bar where Nate attempts to light a fire with Sam's lighter. It bombs once more, so Chloe begins it for himself, and presently they have the interruption they need to work on the riddle cut on the wall behind the bar. Joe's men find them at any rate, causing Nate to get in a battle with them until Chloe at last tracks down another keyhole that she opens with a cross. Another mystery burrow shows up before them, and the couple will get away from right before it closes again, leaving Joe's men behind. Following this passage takes the couple to a mysterious entryway under a wellspring. Furthermore, when they utilize the critical on it, the room starts loading up with water. Tarnish requirements to utilize the cross on the opening over the ground to save them. However, the keyhole is behind thick defensive glass. While he starts chipping away at breaking the glass, Joe makes an appearance to take the cross. What's more, a battle results. At first it appears Joe has the high ground, yet with one fast development, Contaminate reverses the situation and tosses Joe against the glass, at last breaking it. Then, at that point, Contaminate puts the cross on the keyhole and opens the mysterious entryway so the couple can escape, yet just Nate comes out. When he sees Chloe has dropped submerged, Nate returns for herself, and when they're both out, Chloe is stunned to see she's been helped rather than manipulated. This entryway takes them to a Roman vestibule where Nate utilizes his lighter to illuminate a light. Despite the fact that it takes him a couple of attempts, this chamber is underground, as may be obvious them through a seepage barbecue on the road. He likewise finds an image cut on a stone that shows both keys should go together to open the nearby. In this manner Contaminate tosses the key he is through the barbecue so it can arrive at the team. Nate assembles the crosses and figures out how to open another secretive entryway that takes them to a Roman storage facility. There are 3 monster urns in it and 4. A second. The group thinks they've found the gold, yet really the urns are full of salt. As they investigate them, the urns out of nowhere break, which permits them to find a guide among the salt. Nate observes a course that goes from Spain toward the East Indies, yet previously he can talk about the conceivable outcomes. Chloe takes out her firearm and requests that he hands the guide to her. Nate attempts to make an arrangement with her, yet Chloe simply tells him he doesn't have a clue about the full story of what happened to Sam prior to taking him out, also taking off with the guide. Minutes after the fact, Soil awakens Nate and Nate requests to know reality. Contaminate made sense of Sam didn't phantom him, he's simply gone. They had reached the chief's burial chamber together and saw as the diary, yet on out they were gone after by Joe and her men, and Sam got shot. Nate acknowledges Tarnish moved away and passed on Sam there to kick the bucket, and the as it were motivation behind why he enrolled Nate is that Sam might have let him know a portion of the missing hints he was missing to arrive at the gold. In the wake of calling Tarnish voracious and egotistical, Nate breaks their organization and leaves. Later Contaminate finds Nate to attempt to make him return, and Nate acknowledges yet as it were since he's been taking a gander at the postcards and concluded he needs to wrap up what his sibling began. In the meantime, Joe goes to answer to Santiago about what happened exclusively to find Chloe is working for him too, since she's been more fruitful. From now she'll lead the activity, which drives Joe rather crazy. Santiago and his group prepare things at his confidential air terminal, including his adored red vehicle, which Nate and Tarnish exploit to sneak inside by concealing in the storage compartment. Subsequent to checking out at the guide and choosing their direction, Santiago offers a discourse about how his family had been double-crossed and how he will re-establish their honor, yet Joe hinders him by killing him. Chloe gets frightened and attempts to escape, so while Joe and her men pursue her, Nate and Contaminate take the risk to sneak around and recuperate the guide. The arrangement is to likewise take some parachutes and leap off the plane, yet at the point when they come to the freight hold, Nate can't resist the urge to go up against Joe to inquire as to whether she truly killed Sam. Contaminate bounces away with the parachute as Nate ends up in a battle with the men while the freight is driven over the plane, taking us to the start of the story. Joe's men find Chloe and lock in her in a gunfight, which would make her challenging for her to escape by parachute too. Rather, she chooses to get inside the vehicle and drive it off the plane, so when Nate moves back inside, it's Chloe that once more pushes him out, but at the same time she's the one to snatch his hand, also guide him to one of the falling freight boxes, dropping on top of it and opening its parachute, which permits them to land in the ocean securely. The pair floats around for some time until in the end the waves take them to the Philippines, where they really look at in a lodging. Utilizing Contaminate's visa, Chloe prints a map that follows similar aspects as the genuine one, and utilizing Sam's postcards, Nate understands the guide doesn't pinpoint the specific spot to track down the fortune. Tarnish was correct. Sam attempted to leave Nate the last piece of information, so Nate and Chloe go through the late evening attempting to unravel his messages. Chloe gets drained sooner or later. Also hits the sack, however Nate will not give up, and this ends up going in support of himself since he understands he hasn't utilized the most seasoned stunt in Sam's book. Since the lighter actually won't work, Nate utilizes a candle to uncover a mystery message on a postcard advising him to utilize the crosses as a compass. Nate does precisely that. Lastly, finds the area of the gold, composing the directions on a piece of paper prior to hitting the hay as well. The following morning, Joe and her men show up at the area while Chloe awakens first. What's more, tracks down the paper with the directions. She chooses to take the note with her, furthermore leave Nate behind. However, when Nate awakens alone, he isn't stressed on the grounds that she left some unacceptable directions on reason, previously speculating Chloe would double-cross him. Nate takes a speedboat to the cave demonstrated by the directions, ignorant that Joe sees him from a remote place. While checking out some unacceptable spot inside this cavern, Nate takes a dip to go through a submerged passage and comes out inside another cavern where both of Magellan's boats have been covered up all these years, as Nate views as the gold inside. Tarnish appears in the cavern as well on account of the tracker he actually has in his telephone. He tells Nate that Sam would be pleased with him, yet before they can examine things any further, Joe and her men appear, so the pair conceals inside a mysterious compartment with the assistance of Two helicopters. Joe's team transports the whole boat through an opening on top of the cave so Nate and Contaminate emerge from their concealing spot to snatch as much gold as conceivable along with a blade to guard themselves. Then they go higher up and battle the team until they lose each man. The boat currently Contaminate can scale the chains that are holding the boat and arrive at the helicopter where he drives over the man he finds and takes over the control to take off from Joe, who is on the other boat. Joe orders her pilot to follow Soil, making her boat hit the other. Her men bounce into Nate's boat and start a battle. In this way Nate pounds them and gets to take a few weapons from them. He too discovers some black powder lying around. Contaminate guides the helicopter through a tight section between precipices to lose the chasers. However, Joe is hanging tight for him the opposite end, so he needs to pull a exceptionally dangerous move, not run into them. However, this is just a brief evade. Joe and her boat are as yet coming later, them rousing Nate to take outrageous measures. Utilizing the black powder he found, Nate puts a ball inside the boat's gun and later a couple of bombed attempts. He figures out how to make Sam's lighter work and fires the cannon. At the other helicopter, Joe leaps off the boat before it runs into a slope with a helicopter ablaze. Nate and Soil think they've won, yet it ends up Joe has bounced onto their boat and is presently delivering the anchor to keep them from getting away from. Clearly the boat won't hold for a really long time, and Joe and Nate trade a couple of blows before Nate starts climbing the chains to come to the helicopter. Seeing Joe is coming later, Nate Contaminate chooses to change his at last ways and penances his sack of gold by tossing it at Joe, making her fall into the sea. Then, at that point, Contaminate helps Nate into the helicopter just before the chains at long last break and the boat falls on top of Joe, killing her. The boat gets to float for a couple of moments before it starts sinking, and Nate figures they can plunge for treasure later, yet this will not be conceivable. The Philippine Maritime Units are drawing nearer, so the fortune will wind up in hands of their administration. As the pair takes off, Tarnish snickers when he sees Chloe attempting to follow them on a speedboat, yet he likewise regrets the need of fortune anyway. Nate shocks him by showing him the gold he's figured out how to conceal in his jeans. In the meantime, in a jail in no place, Sam composes Nate another postcard advising him to look out. Months after the fact, Nate meets with a specialist working for a man named Roman who is inspired by his ring and needs to trade it for a Nazi guide. The specialist attempts to double-cross Nate by taking both the ring and the guide. However, Tarnish appears and makes an interruption so Nate can recuperate the two things. As the pair leaves together, they're gotten by an inconspicuous individual. Try to subscribe and turn on notices so you can observe more recordings like this. Gratitude for observing.